The Goodwill Tour of the Creature Kings, Part 2, The Urban Ones. Molt woke early the next morning and was already regretting it. He'd slept badly, dreams of webs, threads, and something tugging at the edges of the world. Ginny had perched on the ceiling above him like a Victorian bat. Mr. Feathers had slept on his chest. It cooed along to his heartbeat. "Right," Molt muttered, easing the pigeon off. "Rats first." Mr. Feathers cooed approvingly. The Rat King. The threshold was a storm drain behind a disused laundrette. Molt crouched, placed a bundle of small bones on the concrete, and whispered the old phrase. The world shifted. He found himself in a vast dripping chamber beneath the city, a place that smelled of damp stone, old secrets, and shone with too many eyes. The Rat King was not one rat, but many, a shifting, rippling mass that moved with a single will. A crown of rusted metal shifted from head to head as the swarm scurried. Realm logic shrank him to rat height, so the king's many bodies rose around him like a shifting wall. Molt bowed, careful not to look startled. "Esteemed King, I'm here on behalf of the office to hear any grievances and to ensure the old pact still holds true." The Rat King's voice was a chorus of tiny squeaks woven into one. "We accept your presence, Surface Walker." Mr. Feathers, who had followed this time, puffed up, staring at the swarm with a mixture of awe and horror. Ginny whispered, "They're pretty." Molt prayed she wouldn't say anything else. She did. "Mr. Feathers says rats are like pigeons without wings." The chamber went silent. Molt closed his eyes. The Rat King rippled, then bowed. "A blessing from the Sky King," the chorus said. "We accept the honour." Mr. Feathers made a smug, self-satisfied coo. Molt resisted the urge to walk into a wall. The Rat King's only grievance was that the cats of the city had grown too bold. Molt wrote it down. He did not promise anything, but he'd see what he could do about a campaign for more owners to put bells on their moggies' collars. They'd have to pretend it was about bird safety. Humans didn't care about rats. The main obstacle would be the Homo felinus. Real cats weren't their priority, but they did look out for feline interests. If they could frame it as making the chase more challenging, a sporting enhancement, it might pass. The Fox Envoy. The next threshold was a hedge maze in a neglected park. Molt walked until the air felt thin, expectant, the kind of quiet that meant he was close. Molt had left all his important equipment at home, the scroll, the quill, the sending sack, even his hat. Fox realms were no place for valuables. Instead, he carried pockets full of scraps, crinkly wrappers, and edible decoys, the traditional acceptable losses kit. A fox's scream tore through the stillness, not distant, not random, a deliberate acknowledgement. Molt bowed his head slightly. "I come in peace and intend no harm to fox, vixen or cub." The world tilted sideways. He emerged into a twilight clearing where the Fox Envoy lounged on a fallen log, tail curled elegantly around her paws. Behind her, cubs rolled and played, practicing their pounces. As he stepped forward, foxes brushed against his legs, warm, quick, and utterly unembarrassed. Slippery paws slid into his pockets, and the edibles vanished one by one. Molt didn't react. In the fox realm, stolen tribute was the proper greeting. She smiled with too many teeth. "Detective." Molt bowed. "Envoy, I'm here to hear any grievances and to ensure the old pact still holds." She circled him, sniffing. "You smell of spider silk and rat blessing. Busy morning?" "Unfortunately." She came close, fox close, brushing her shoulder against his arm, her whiskers flicking his jaw as she inspected him. A soft, throaty chitter vibrated in her chest. Not flirtation, but a fox's way of asserting social dominance. Her tail swished in slow, deliberate arcs, marking the air around him as temporarily hers. She spoke happily of the recent hunting bans and of how well her people had adapted to the urban environment with little pushback from the humans. Her main grievance was simple. "Humans keep leaving bins locked. It is rude." Molt went to write this down in his notebook. His pen was missing, so was his spare one, and it turned out so was his notebook. Luckily it was blank. He'd had the foresight to leave his current active notepad back in the office. He promised to remember what she'd said and took his leave, bowing as he went. The Pike Sovereign. After retrieving his things from the office and a new pen and his old notepad, Molt walked onto a quiet jetty overlooking a still green lake, the threshold of the Pike Kingdom. He stripped down to his underlayer and folded his clothes neatly on the boards. His scroll, quill and sending sack went on top. Pike realms were no place for anything that could be swallowed. He drew the water-breathing glyph on his throat, pressed 2 fingers to it and felt the faint cold shift that meant it was active. Molt placed a pebble in the water and whispered the Sovereign's name. The world lurched. He was suddenly underwater and small, realm logic shrinking him to bite-sized proportions. Green light filtered through reeds that swayed like slow dancers. Fish drifted with predatory purpose. He didn't wait. "Esteemed Sovereign, I come in peace and intend no harm." He kicked upward, downward, sideways, anywhere that wasn't teeth. "Envoy of the office, here to hear grievances, not a snack!" A shadow moved. The Pike Sovereign glided into view, long, sleek, ancient, a mouthful of backward-angled teeth, eyes bright with cold intelligence and unmistakable hunger. Molt repeated his greeting like a mantra. It was very important the Pike Sovereign got the message. It passed him once, twice, a third time slower. "Such a small morsel," it murmured. "Soft, unarmoured. Surely no one would miss it." Molt kept moving, kept speaking, kept himself visible. "My office would miss me," he said sharply. "And we have crocodile and alligator reptile folk whose teeth dwarf even yours, mighty Sovereign." A ripple of irritation passed through the water. Denied a meal, the Sovereign's tail flicked with annoyance. At last, it spoke. "The water warms too early. The weeds choke the shallows. The currents are wrong. And something old in the mud is restless. If the balance breaks, it will wake angry." Molt nodded, still swimming, still keeping distance. "I will report it." Predators didn't talk about restless silt unless something was genuinely wrong. He'd write it in their report and hope the office wouldn't ignore it until it started dragging joggers into the lake. The Sovereign drifted closer, close enough that Molt felt the pull of its breath. "See that you do," it said, voice low with hunger and displeasure. With a violent flick of its tail, the realm spat him out. He landed on the jetty in a sodden heap, gasping and dripping, his underlayer plastered to his scales. Ginny clapped. Mr. Feathers pecked his sleeve sympathetically. Molt lay there for a moment, staring at the sky. "He complained about pollution," Molt muttered, wringing out his underlayer, "but I'm fairly sure I just soiled his water." The Owl Matriarch. The threshold was a church loft. Molt paused at the bottom of the narrow stairs. "Ginny, stay down here," he said quietly. She looked wounded. Mr. Feathers tilted his head, curious. "They eat pigeons," Molt added. Ginny's eyes widened in understanding. She hugged Mr. Feathers protectively, then nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Lizard." Molt climbed the stairs, drew a glyph on the hatch, and pushed it open into the owl domain. He stepped into a world of dust motes and moonlight. Dozens of eyes opened. A parliament of owls lined the rafters on either side, arranged like benches in an ancient chamber. Barn owls pale as ghosts, tawnies mottled like bark, long-eared owls solemn and narrow-faced, a snowy owl gleaming like frost. At their centre, on the highest beam, sat the Owl Matriarch, not the largest, but the one whose stillness commanded the room. The Parliament spoke in one voice. "Who?" Not a question, a recognition. Molt bowed, eyes lowered. "Matriarch, Parliament, I'm here to hear any grievances and to ensure the old pact still holds." Silence. Owls excelled at silence. They held it like a ruling. The Matriarch stared at him for a very long time. A soft rustle passed along the rafters, not disorder, but attention sharpening. Finally she spoke. "Your heart beats too loudly." Molt swallowed. "I'll try to fix that." A ripple of feathers, acknowledgement, not approval. The Matriarch continued. "The humans have hung false suns along our hunting paths. They burn the night. They blind the quiet places. They make the darkness shallow." Molt wrote it down, aware of every eye following the movement of his pen. The Matriarch did not blink. "I'll try to fix that too," he muttered. "Humans call it light pollution. Many of them rail against it as well. We'll look into it. Someone will be in touch. He backed out slowly, bowing again, careful not to turn his back until he reached the hatch. The Parliament watched him go. He eased the hatch shut behind him. The Lepidoptera Queen. The Lepidoptera Queen was dual in nature. By night she was the Moth Empress, by day the Butterfly Monarch. The threshold was a derelict greenhouse. Molt stepped inside. The air shimmered, glass mended itself, rust blossomed into gold. The broken structure unfurled into a vaulted palace of light and shadow. Every pane of stained glass bloomed with colour, not random patterns, but the echo of wings. Swallowtail yellows, chalk hill blues, cinnabar reds, eye spots, scallops, veining, dusted edges. A cathedral built from the memory of Lepidoptera. A small moth drifted toward them, pale and delicate. As she approached, she grew, wings unfolding, body lengthening, until she stood at Molt's height, luminous and soft as moonlight. The Moth Empress. "Little flame," she whispered. Molt bowed. "Empress, I'm here to hear any grievances and to ensure the old pact still holds." She ignored him entirely and floated toward Ginny. "You shine," she murmured. "Stay with me. Be my lantern." Ginny shook her head. "I'm with Mr. Lizard." The Empress's wings drooped in a soft sigh. She turned back to Molt, her voice shifting, still soft but edged with sorrow. "By night the humans hang false moons. They blaze until dawn. They drown the stars. My children spiral toward them and break their wings against the glass." Molt wrote it down. The Empress's wings brightened, colours blooming across them like sunrise. The butterfly panes in the stained glass flared in answer. Her posture shifted, her voice warming. The night-pale Moth Empress unfurled into her day aspect, the Butterfly Monarch. She lifted a hand and touched one pane gently, a square of soft powdery blue. Its colour flickered at the edges as though struggling to stay lit. "The Chalk Hill Blues," she murmured. "This one remembers them. But it grows dim. Their meadows shrink. Their flowers vanish. Their children wander with nowhere to land." Molt wrote it down, the weight of the gesture settling in his chest. "Some lights go out," she whispered, "and do not return." Molt added it to the report. The monarch drifted toward Ginny again, hopeful. Molt stepped between them. "I am sorry, my queen, but Ginny is important to my work. I cannot possibly spare her," he said gently. "Perhaps we might visit again sometime, if it pleases you." The queen wilted, folding in on herself, wings dimming back to moon pale. "Yes," she murmured. "I think I should like that very much." They stepped out of the greenhouse and into the late afternoon light. Ginny skipped ahead, humming to herself. Mr. Feathers launched into a delighted spiral, wings catching the sun in brief iridescent flashes. Molt allowed himself a breath. The beauty of the Butterfly Monarch's realm still clung to him. Colour, warmth, the soft hush of wings. For a moment he felt almost hopeful. Then a thought intruded, unwelcome, inconvenient. He had eaten moths before. Not often, not recently, but still. He grimaced. "Right, no more of that," he muttered. Then something else flickered at the edge of his thoughts. The Pike Sovereign's warning. The Spider God's voice. Something tugs at the threads. His tail twitched. The moment of lightness evaporated. He straightened, expression tightening back into its usual weary professionalism. He sighed. "Tomorrow," he said, "is going to be worse."